Generics in Java are required when creating libraries, but can also be extremely useful in your day-to-day coding. Today, I will explain them to you, but also show you some examples of use cases. If you are interested in that, let me introduce you to Java generics. Generics in Java allow you to create classes, interfaces, and methods that can work with different data types, while ensuring type safety. You can think of them as a way to write reusable and writable code without sacrificing type checking. Historically, before generics were added to Java, programmers used object, and this method forced you to cast the type manually, which provided no type safety. As I said before, generics are irreplaceable when creating libraries, and if you look into most of the methods from classes from Java standard library, they will be using generics in some form. One example is the object class that is using the wildcard. More on the wildcards later. Okay, what are generic types? Generic type is a generic class or interface that is parameterized over types. As shown in the example before, we can provide whatever type we want to our generic box class. But as I said, we can also use interfaces. And nothing is stopping you to add multiple type parameters after a colon. For example, we can even add more than two, like 3 or 4. To use generics in your method, you don't have to make the whole class generic. You can just add your type before return type declaration. Before we go any further, I want to explain to you naming conventions when using generics. In our pair example, we used K and V. You can already guess that K stands for key and V stands for value. In our box example, we used T, that obviously stands for type. But there's also E for element and N for number. When you need more types in your class, you can use S, U, and V for second, third, and fourth type in your class. When working with generics, you might need to limit types that can be passed as parameters. Bounded type parameters allow us to restrict our type to specific subclass. We use extends keyword to create upper bound. Now every object added to number box must extend number class. When you need more flexibility when working with generic types, you can use wildcards with question mark syntax. There are 3 ways you can use wildcards. Wildcards can have upper bounds as shown here, but also lower bounds with super keyword. And this method can now have objects that are parent type of the integer. Of course, you can always use wildcards without any bounds. Main difference between wildcards and bounded type is the fact that wildcards are more flexible, but don't allow setting values of object, but only allow to get them. Bounded type, on the other hand, allows to do both, but is less flexible. If you want to learn more about Java, here is my last video about Java serialization. And till the next time, create some amazing applications.